I never wanted to become involved with this guy in the first place. It's one of my weirdest and upsetting experiences ever, and I'm a senior citizen now. My parents, especially my mother, fought me tooth and nail and basically helped this guy stalk me. I've never quite figured out why. "You're making the biggest mistake of your life," she sobbed. No way. Even thinking about him still makes my skin crawl. It might have been a control thing. She thinks she's going to get away from us. She thinks she's going to do whatever she wants and we can't do anything about it. Well. We're friends with Rich, and after they're married, he and we will be taking care of what goes in and out of her head for the rest of her life. Anyway, here's what happened. I got even by sending him to hell. Etiquette hell. There's my story as I posted it there years ago. This happened in 1978, but I may never recover. If it had happened in the era of stalker awareness, I would have been terrified. First, some backstory. I was adopted, which isn't a bad thing, except that my parents had wanted a perfect dream Barbie doll daughter and I was supposed to live out their script. They were very controlling, and coupled with alcohol abuse, by the time I was a teen, the breach was so bad I wasn't living in their house most of the time. I'd try to move back and fix things, but it never worked. What finally broke my back was a guy I'll call Rich. Rich called my house one afternoon and asked for a date. I told him I didn't know him, true, and that I wasn't allowed to date, also true. He seemed annoyed because I didn't know who he was. I'm on the student council. I am head of our junior achievement club. Big deal. So what? I asked how he got my number because it was unlisted, and he said he volunteered in the school office and pulled my number from student records. That should have been my first clue, but remember, I was only 15. Anyway, I told him no and hung up, thinking this was the end of it. The next day, I get home from school and find Mom all excited. She's gotten a call from El Creepo and his mother, and was impressed that she decided I could go out with him. His mom was going to pick us up and bring me home, so it was okay. I told her I didn't even know the guy, but she thought this was so sweet that he had his mother introduce him. We went out for pizza and a movie, and I thought he was a nice enough guy, but I really wasn't interested in him. However, he decided this one date meant I was his girlfriend now. He was aided and abetted in this by my mother, who thought he was perfect and just what we always wanted for you. Explaining to her that I wasn't interested in him just brought up a monologue about what a great guy he was, what a good family he comes from. Why would I rather be home reading a book than out having a good time? Telling her I didn't have a good time didn't compute in her brain. I never got to see my other friends because he was monopolizing all my time. Weekends, I had to go to his house for dinner and watch TV. First, we watched The Love Boat. Then we watched Fantasy Island, and I had to endure his siblings running around the living room, flapping their arms and yelling the plane. I wish I was making this up. On Saturday and Sunday, we played Atari at his house. At least he had good games. Sunday mornings, as soon as Rich wakes up, he calls me. I tried telling him I wasn't interested in a relationship and I didn't want to see him anymore. He started to freaking cry. I had to shake his hands off me. While I was walking home, he called Mom in tears to tell her goodbye. And I guess I just didn't love her enough. And the psycho blasted me when I walked in the door for being so mean to this sweet guy. He quickly learned the way to force me out on dates was to ask in front of her because she would roll over any excuse I came up with. He began trying to get rid of my friends by complaining that they don't like me, true, and asked Mom to make sure they weren't invited over when he was there. My friends either didn't like him or were a bad influence on me. He griped about my clothes and makeup. He hated lipstick especially. I told my mom, thinking she'd agree how stupid this was, but when I got dressed for school the next day, she blew up. "What are you doing with that makeup on? Rich told you he doesn't like that. You get in there and wash your face." I was flabbergasted, but said hell no to both of them and wore whatever I liked. He'd scowl and screw his face up into the ugliest sneers, saying I look like a streetwalker. Over lipstick, eyeshadow, and mascara. A girl your age has no business wearing a bikini. That top is too low cut. Why don't you show some self-respect? I was the flattest of flat-chested girls? I wish he'd been really abusive because then my parents would have agreed to get rid of him. But he was an honor student from a good family, not a troublemaker. At school, the teachers liked him, and although the other kids thought he was a #1 nerd, didn't bully him because he stomped everybody's behind academically. I don't know why he fixated on me, maybe because I was the shyest kid in school. He never hit me or was verbally abusive, I just couldn't peel him off. Christmas was the worst. He gave me a list. This is what he wants for Christmas. This is what his sister wants for Christmas. This is what his mother wants for Christmas. He expected me to buy gifts for his family. I wasn't even planning to get him anything, and he wanted an Atari game. We couldn't afford an Atari system for ourselves, but Mom of course buys it for him. She gets everything on the list and tells me to hush because they're getting me something too. I asked Rich for a gift certificate to the bookstore, but his mom says gift certs are tacky. They will get me a real gift, so I'm thinking something cool. He gets me, I kid you not, a set of ladies' handkerchiefs. I saw them too for $5 at Kmart. After he demanded an Atari game, his sister gets me nothing. His mom buys me a football jersey. I am not a football fan, like the one Rich wears. Mom goes gay saying how cute that will match, and be sure to wear it next Friday so they'll see how much I like it. I quietly throw it away. I blasted my parents for manipulating and interfering and moved out again. They gave Rich my new address and phone number. I moved and changed numbers again and didn't give them the number. He had Mom go to one of my friends and wheedle it out of her. I almost got fired from a job because he wouldn't stop calling me. He waited for me outside the door of my work and followed me, begging and crying. He followed another guy I was dating and tried to convince him we were engaged. I called the cops, but they said he wasn't breaking any laws and even lectured me for not being forceful enough. Sometimes he would disappear for a few months, but always turned up again. My roommate came home from work one day to find him mowing the lawn at the duplex we were renting. At this time, the word stalking didn't exist, or I would have been terrified. The harassment ended only when I moved out of town. I went back for a family funeral and found he had gone to pay respects and introduced himself to everyone as my boyfriend. Ick. I told everyone if they told him where I was living, I'd shoot them first and him second. I never went to my high school reunions because I was afraid of seeing him there. I wonder sometimes if he ever got married. I feel sorry for the girl if he did. Rich, let's not meet. This happened over 10 years ago, but I still think about how close I came to dying. I was already with my future husband when I met his cousin. We had a lot in common. We'd both struggled with addiction and anorexia. We'd talk on the phone and met up to eat and see a movie, but he kissed me in his car, so I decided it was best if we stopped talking. I told my future husband about the kiss, and he was understanding. I didn't tell him that his cousin got extremely upset over me turning him down. Some time passed, and we started meeting up as friends. Since we were both starving ourselves, we always went to the same place, but after a couple times, I felt like it wasn't healthy for either of us to meet up. He asked me to meet up one last time, and I stupidly said yes. We went to our place, and during dinner, he was talking about his apartment and job. How happy he could make me. I got uncomfortable and asked him to drive me home. It was really late, and instead of driving me home, he drove to the forest preserve. It was pitch black because all the lights were off. I immediately felt uneasy. We were alone in the parking lot, and I had a horrible feeling at this point that something was going to happen. He parked and turned off his car, then looked at me and said we were meant for each other. I didn't want to upset him, so I just said that he knew I was engaged and that we were just friends. He had a history of violence, so I was terrified. He started getting really upset and almost crying. He said that he loved me. Then he put his arm around my neck and held his arm down really hard on my right side of my neck. His arm was around my neck, and I'd been looking straight ahead when suddenly I woke up to a police officer at his window. He was asking if I was okay. I was really scared and confused. I had some vomit on my shirt and I'd wet my pants. He'd pressed down on my carotid artery for long enough that it knocked me out. He was a wrestler in us. He was telling the officer we were fine and that I was drunk. He got a ticket, but I was too afraid to say anything because if he was arrested, my now husband's family wouldn't have blamed me, but that's what I thought. I said I was fine, but I wanted to go home now. I thought if I said it in front of the officer, he would drive me home because he took our names and he wouldn't risk trying something else. So he drove me home and didn't say anything. I don't know if he was trying to kill me or just got so upset he went way overboard. Regardless, he almost did kill me and it really fucked me up. A person doesn't vomit and wet themselves after a neck compression unless they almost died. I told my now husband, but not right away because I felt like it was partly my fault for meeting up with him. I only saw him a couple more times at holidays and then he stopped coming, but he didn't dare speak to me after what he did. If that officer hadn't shown up, I don't know if I'd be here. Hi, this is the first time I'm sharing something here, so I hope my story will be easy to understand. By the way, this isn't my account. For privacy reasons, I won't give my name or age. For a bit of context, this happened about 2 years ago, a few weeks after my little brother was born. Ever since we moved into this house, there's been this small room in the basement that's always locked. To show you how little anyone uses it, I don't even know what's in there, but I've always assumed it's just utility stuff like meters or something. The room is really tiny, barely big enough to lie down in. Now, let's get into it. My parents went away for a weekend together, leaving me, my older sister, and my baby brother, who was just a few weeks old at the time, at home. My parents trusted us to take care of ourselves since they'd done this before. Anyway, that night my sister went out with friends and wasn't planning to come back until 4 or 5 in the morning. I watched a good movie, and since it was already getting late, I decided to put my little brother to bed in his room upstairs. I did that and came back down to watch another movie, but I ended up falling asleep. About 2 or 3 hours later, around midnight, I woke up to these strange noises coming from upstairs. At first, I thought it was just the neighbors since they can be pretty loud and the walls are thin. But then I looked at the time and realized it was too late for them to still be awake, let alone making that kind of noise. So, I got closer to the stairs to investigate, and just as I was about to go up the first step, I heard the sound of something metal falling on the ground. Guess what? It was the key to the small room in the basement. I immediately grabbed my phone, and instead of calling the police, I texted my friends to tell them what was happening. One of my friends had the brilliant idea of calling the police for me. Suddenly, I heard the bathroom door slam shut. I knew it was that door because it makes a very specific creaking noise when it closes. I remembered my brother was sleeping upstairs, so I carefully went up to check if he was okay. Thankfully, he was fine. Still not fully grasping how much danger I was in, I went to the bathroom door. Since it opens inward, I decided to violently push it open, and I heard a man scream. I immediately shut the door and held it closed to keep him from getting out. He broke the window, and outside the bathroom, there's this sort of balcony, not a proper one, but you get the idea, that connects to the balconies of the neighboring houses, which are all really close together. He used that to escape. I grabbed my brother in my arms, ran to the kitchen, and noticed that one of the knives was missing from the knife block. I picked up another knife and crouched in a corner of the living room, crying like never before. The police arrived, and I opened the door for them. When they searched the house, they confirmed that the bathroom window was broken, and I had hit the guy so hard that there was blood on the floor. But the most shocking and traumatizing part was what they found in that small basement room. There were blankets and cans of food. They concluded that he had been living there for several days. That's it. I hesitated a lot before posting this because it really affected me, and I'm sorry if the story isn't super clear. Some of the details are still jumbled in my head. Anyway, I hope you found it interesting.